Hello everyone, welcome to yet another session of the daily news analysis by SRIRAM'S IAS, where we take up the important articles featuring in the Hindu newspaper and break them down for our understanding from the UPSC examination point of view. Let's start today's discussion by taking up the important articles. The important articles which feature in the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper are on our screens. Let's take up the first article for our discussion. The first article which appears in the text and context section, which reads in high resolution unfolding mysteries of the night sky. Now this first article pertains to the much talked about images that have been put out by the NASA, which have been captured by the James Webb telescope. This was the telescope that we had discussed in the yesterday's session as well, and the another set of images have been released by NASA, which this telescope has captured. So we will be discussing these images, what exactly these images signify, because they are truly fascinating set of images which put a lot of spotlight on the origin of universe, as to how the universe when it was originating, how did it look, what were the components then. So these images help us to find that out, and in that context the telescope also becomes important, and the properties of these images also become important, which can be asked in any format as a question. So this becomes important for us from the science and technology point of view, and especially with more importance placed from the prelims examination point of view. So yesterday we saw the James Webb telescope. This is the James Webb telescope, which is a infrared telescope, right? How is it different from the Hubble telescope or other telescope previously sent? This particular mirror, this is a mirror which is designed to read the infrared light. Earlier the telescopes, that is the Hubble telescope, was absorbing only the ultraviolet light or the visible light, but the James Webb telescope has the unique feature of reading the infrared light. Plus the mirror size of the James Webb telescope is quite large than the other telescope. So what this does is, larger the mirror, larger area the telescope gets to absorb the light, and since the area is large, the light from farther distances can be absorbed by this telescope, right? So this is the special feature of the James Webb telescope, and due to this has been placed also not near to the Earth's orbit but in the L2, right? This we saw in the Lagrange point 2, which is around 1.5 million kilometer away from the Earth. So this significant distance placed from the Earth makes it again viable to read farther distances coming from the universe. So these are the properties now of the James Webb telescope. But there are a lot of talks going on wherein it is said that this James Webb telescope is capable of time travel. Is this possible? How is it able to do so? How is it able to showcase this kind of properties? So the concept of time travel basically means that the kind of images it is reading, these images are not of the present. These images are way back of the past, millions and millions of years ago. But since the light travels in a particular speed, right, we know that light travels around 3 lakh kilometers per second. So if any object emanates light, it takes time for us to reach that light. Let's say for example, through this diagram, if the sun emits a light, it takes 8 minutes for it to travel of 150 million kilometer to reach Earth, which means that it takes 8 minutes for us to realize that the light from the sun is coming. Now let's say the next day sun is disappeared, so it will take 8 minutes for us to realize that the sun has disappeared. This means that the light takes certain time to travel in the space. This is the concept which is used, wherein millions of years ago, whatever events that happened, they might have emanated light, and this emanated light, once the event is still over, the light is still being emanated, and this light is captured by the James Webb telescope, which after capturing it is processed into an image, which is how we can see an image of an event or of an event in space and time which has happened millions and millions of years ago. This is the concept of time travel which is there, which is what we are able to see, that the James Webb telescope is actually able to capture the images of those events which have already happened millions and millions of years ago. So let's take a look at these images. If this concept of absorbing the light coming from far distance is clear. So the first image is that of a galaxy cluster. Now this is a first image that the NASA put out, which the James Webb Telescope captured. This is known as the SMACS 0723 galaxy cluster. This is nothing but a cluster of galaxies together which the James Webb Telescope has found out, which is around 7,000 light years away from the Earth, which means that it is far from the Earth, and which we can see that there are a lot of galaxies in the space which the telescope has captured. And the startling thing again is that this whole picture, which is a infrared image of the distant universe, right? But this whole expanse is the field of view for this new image, a color composite of multiple exposures, and each about 2 hours long, is approximately at the size of a grain of sand held at arm's length. So this means that this particular image of the space, in reality for us, it is at the size of a sand grain held at an arm's length. In that minuscule size, we are able to capture this vast and expanse of space. Can we get an idea as to how huge the universe is by this? This is the startling thing that comes out from this image. So this is basically a galaxy cluster, and those objects which can be reflected on the red color, some of these stars or galaxies which are reflected in the red color are said to be around 13 billion years old, which means that they are just 800 million away from the Big Bang. So the Big Bang happened around 13.8 billion years ago, which means that 13.8 billion years ago there was nothing, and suddenly there was an explosion from which the origin of this universe began. And some of these galaxies which the telescope has captured are around 13 billion years old, which means that they are as fresh as the universe that was at that period of time. So this is the first surprising thing about this image. Now talking about the second image, this is the Southern Ring Nebula. These two images are comparison, first of all, between the James Webb Telescope. This is captured by the James Webb, and this was captured by the Hubble telescope. So we can see the difference where the James Webb Telescope capturing the same phenomena has given clarity. Why has this clarity been encountered? Because where the Hubble telescope used the ultraviolet light range and visible light range, the James Webb uses the infrared light. Now the infrared rays are able to pass through these objects much easily, and that is why the image becomes clearer for the telescope, right? So due to that property we see a clearer image. Now what is this? This is basically a dying star. When we say the Southern Ring Nebula, this is a ring of gas. This is a ring of gas and dust. So when a star dies, it explodes, and all the material that the star contained explodes around it. So this is the dust and gas which after the explosion of the star is visible. So this is the image captured which we see of a falling star emanating the dust and gas from it. This was the Southern Nebula ring. Then we have the Stephan's Quintet. Quintet means a set of 5 things. So we have a set of 5 galaxies. This is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now this is also a fascinating set of image that the James Webb Telescope has taken out, where we can see that this is also millions of years ago, during the time of origin of the universe, where we see that these 4 galaxies are colliding and interacting with each other, and between them it is said that there is a supermassive black hole in which these 4 galaxies are colliding together. So this is a phenomenon which we get to see in this Stephan's Quintet. And why the quintet? Because there is this is a set of 5 galaxies which the telescope has found out, right, which it is captured. So I hope this is clear. This particular image shows us as to how these 4 galaxies are interacting and in effect colliding with each other in the center of them, which is a supermassive black hole. So that is the Stephan's Quintet. Coming to the next image which we saw yesterday as well, this is a cosmic cliff, which is again the image of a dying star captured. in which the gas particles and dust particles are being emanated out from a dying star, and this is the image captured by the James Webb telescope in that aspect. So as we can see, what are we able to gather from this information? First of all, the extraordinary quality of capturing quite high resolution images due to the infrared light absorbing capacity of the James Webb telescope, through which we are able to see these phenomena of this space which happened millions of years ago, which this telescope is able to capture and show us as to how the universe began, how it originated, and how it is still developing, and various phenomena that we can see in this universe's space and time, right. So with this, let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article which appears in the newspaper reads, "Scale up the India-South Korea bilateral partnership." Now, as the article headline reads, this article is in the context of the relation between India and South Korea. This becomes important for us from the point of view of GS2, where we study international relations and those relations with those countries which are very critical for India. So how does South Korea become critical for India? We repeatedly talk about the incursions of China in and around India, where China is trying to encircle India and also trying to befriend India's enemies or those countries which India does not share good relations with. So South Korea is a neighboring country to China, and therefore in order to combat China as well as leverage the bilateral trade relationship potential with South Korea, the relationship between India and South Korea gains of much more importance, right. It gains utmost importance, where India should engage with South Korea, which is the argument made by the authors of the article. So in this context, we'll try to look at the relations between these two countries on various fronts. So let's have a look at it. So when we talk about India-South Korea relationship, the political front on the relationship, we saw that in May 2015 the bilateral relationship was upgraded to special strategic partnership. So now the relationship between these two countries has seen a topsy-turvy ride, wherein earlier India did share a good bond with South Korea, but it did not materialize into a lot of economic trade relations as well as political relations. The reasons for this was the erstwhile president of South Korea was not affable with trading with India or keeping good relations with India. But what has happened as a change in South Korea right now is that a new president has come up in South Korea, who, since there is a change of the face in South Korea, it is said that he is now more willing to participate with India in a political and economic relationship. This becomes the backdrop for the change in dynamics that can potentially happen between India and South Korea. That is the context with which the authors try and say that doesn't matter if India and South Korea did not share a very healthy relationship erstwhile, it can build on it right now. With the change in leadership in South Korea, India and South Korea can go along in their relationship on the various fronts. So India has a major role to play in South Korea's southern policy, under which Korea is looking at expanding relations beyond its immediate region, right? And similarly, South Korea is a major player in India's Act East policy as well, under which India aims to promote economic cooperation, cultural ties, and develop strategic relationships with countries in the Asia Pacific. So currently, India is engaging with Vietnam, India is engaging with the Japan, and now apart from Vietnam and Japan, if South Korea also India is able to establish strategic and political ties with South Korea as well, it will again enhance its Act East policy and its move to strengthen its relationship with the East neighbors. Now, with respect to regional stability, why the concept of regional stability is important? Again, due to the rising ambitions of China, and therefore a lot of uncertainties loom in this region. So the regional tensions in the South Asia, especially between India and China, create a common interest for India and South Korea. The relations between South Korea and China are also not that well. So this could be a collaborative approach for regional stability. Now, on the nuclear front as well, Both these countries, India and South Korea, face a nuclear neighbor, in our case Pakistan, and in their case China. So cooperation for both these countries on the nuclear front as well is also of key importance to especially South Korea. Its key interest in managing their nuclear neighbor, that is North Korea and China as well, similar to India's considerations toward Pakistan. So this creates a common interest for them to collaborate on the nuclear front. And the US alliance system established with South Korea and Japan puts pressure on North Korea to cap its nuclear program, and in this India can participate as well. And containing North Korea is beneficial to India's economic and regional ambit in East Asia. Right? So this is their front on which they can cooperate on the nuclear front. Next is the economic front. This is by far the most important front in which both countries can participate, because both of them are worried about Chinese involvement in their countries, wherein in India also China is participating in trade a lot, and similarly in South Korea. So both of them can collaborate with each other and break this dependence on the supply chain of China. So the current bilateral trade between India and South Korea is at 21 billion, and their target has been set to increase it to $50 billion by the year 2030. And if their partnership is enhanced, this target can be easily reached. So India and South Korea are negotiating also the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, which we call the CEPA. Now what is a Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement? It is similar to a free trade agreement. We had seen that there are various stages of these agreements. First we have the preferential trade agreement, then we have the free trade agreement, then we have the comprehensive partnership agreement. The difference between these is that these agreements are put together by two countries or two or more countries to facilitate trade between them, which means that they come together and identify certain areas so that less import duty would be levied on products that would be imported from the other country. So such kind of clauses are added in these agreements to facilitate trade between countries. So this is the concept of Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. It goes one step beyond the free trade agreement. So this is being negotiated between these two countries, and we can hope that it soon gets finalized. And to facilitate investment from Korea, India has launched a Korea Plus facilitation cell under the Invest India to guide, assist and handhold investors. So this is a special initiative done by India as well with respect to increased trade with in the context of Korea. This is on the economic front. Now coming to the diplomatic front. There is a long lasting regional security dilemma with the continued verbal provocations and a conventional arms race, because both these countries face hostile neighbors. Thus, despite the alliance system, Seoul appears to be searching for a stronger diplomatic stand on imminent regional issues beyond the alliance system, and therefore its approach to India comes with strategic optimism for expanding ties to ensure a convergence of interest in planning global and regional strategic frameworks. What this means is that it is also in the interest of South Korea to engage with India so that it enhances its strategic capabilities and partnerships and does not depend on only the regional players and is able to better protect itself. And on the lastly, the cultural front, where India and South Korea share a lot of cultural ties as well, wherein the Korean Buddhist monk Haiko or Hong Jiao visited India from 723 to 729 AD and wrote the travelogue Pilgrimage to the Five Kingdoms of India, which gives a vivid account of Indian culture and politics and society. This shows the historical ties between India and South Korea, wherein already a Buddhist monk visited in the 723 AD period. And from India, Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore had composed a short but evocative poem, that is Lamp of the East, in 1929 about Korea's glorious past and its promising bright future. Apart from this cultural context, we also see the emergence of Korean drama serials and the Korean culture propagating into the Indian masses, wherein a lot of people are consuming Korean content. Recent example we can say is the Squid Games, right? This shows the increasing interaction between India and South Korea, wherein the culture of South Korea is able to propagate in among the Indian masses, and even this helps between the people to people connect between the two countries. So this was the background about the relationship between the India and South Korea, and what stand they currently have and how they can improve their bilateral relationship. So with this, let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article which appears in the newspaper reads, I2u2 can become a regional feature like Quad, says Jake Sullivan. Now this is a new grouping that has come into the market. Every day we get to read about one or another grouping. Why is this happening? Because these are a lot of uncertain times going on in the world order, and wherein one country does not have good relations with another country, it is trying to build as many friendships as it can with other countries. So that is why we see that a lot of new groupings are coming up, and in this context we study about the I2u2 grouping. Now what is this? This is a new grouping based in the Middle East region between 4 countries, that is India, Israel, that stands for I2, and USA and UAE. Now this grouping becomes important because there's a lot of uncertainty that prevails over the West Asian region always, and currently the US President will go on a tour of West Asia. Will he visit Israel and other countries as well. So in this tour, his tour of West Asia, he has called the Prime Minister of India as well in the grouping of I2u2, which is an initiative between these 4 countries to collaborate on security purposes, strategic purposes and economic purposes as well. Now why is this grouping important? First of all, UAE stands at the Persian Gulf, and we have Israel, which is there as a country which is surrounded in the has borders with the Mediterranean Sea. Now why does this grouping gain significance? We know that USA is a supporter of Israel, right? It has been advocating the rights of Israel, so, and it also is now interested in balancing Israel's relations with the other countries of West Asia, such as Saudi Arabia, right, Bahrain and all UAE, all these other countries. So last year US made these countries sign a pact known as Abraham Accords, wherein these Israel, which was not having good relations with other countries, these other West Asian countries, USA came in and brokered this peace accords, which were known as Abraham Accords, which was signed between USA, Israel and UAE and Saudi Arabia as well. So in order to facilitate this growing partnership between these countries, USA needs a player, another big player which can again contribute to this setup, and which is that player which USA thinks can do this thing. It thinks that India, which also has stand in good relations with these West Asian countries, India has able to manage good relations with Israel as well and UAE and other countries as well. So USA thinks that India can step in as a significant player in this region to ensure peace as well as prosperity and enhancement in the economic relations. That is why this grouping becomes important, wherein India also has a role to play. So let's look at something about the significance of this I2u2 grouping, wherein, as I said, first becomes the security cooperation, wherein this will help the countries in exploring security cooperation among the 4 nations within the framework of these new groupings. Then second cooperation area which gains significance for them is that all these countries majorly are technological hubs. Each of these countries is a technological hub, and biotechnology is especially prominent in each of these countries where they can collaborate. And third important, which is going to be the central piece of the discussion when the 4 leaders of this of the countries will meet in the grouping, is going to be on the food security and the agricultural cooperation that can happen, because as we know, because of the war between Russia and Ukraine, the food supplies throughout the world have taken a hit. So how can this be tackled and the food supplies to the West Asian region can be bridged? This can be talked on. This initiative offers an opportunity to discuss food security for these 4 nations. And then apart from these, they can also work together in different fields on a number of levels, whether it's technologies, trade, climate, fighting against COVID, or even security. So this becomes a important grouping again, which comes up, wherein India earlier, which did not play an active role in the West Asian region, right? We did not see much of its interaction with the West Asian nations in such an active manner, but India has changed its approach, and it is engaging with the West Asian countries in a more proactive manner, right? So this becomes the importance for this grouping. With this, let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article which appears in the newspaper reads, India ranks 135 out of 146 in the Gender Gap Index. Now, this index becomes important for us, especially from the prelims examination point of view, where we see the mentions and questions on a lot of indexes, and this becomes important from the GS1 point of view, where we can quote this in answers wherever we come across sociological issues, and in GS2 portion as well, where we talk about initiatives that are taken to uplift the vulnerable sections of society. So let's study about the Global Gender Gap Index. So first of all, it was first published in 2006 and is published by which organization? The World Economic Forum. So this is something which we can remember, is that the World Economic Forum publishes the Global Gender Gap Report, and it benchmarks 156 countries on their progress towards gender parity in 4 dimensions. So this index is calculated on the performances of countries on 4 major parameters. Which are these 4 major parameters? First is the economic participation and opportunity, which generally would mean that the women and other population, how effectively are they able to participate in the economy? Are they able to procure jobs? Are they skilled enough to procure jobs? That is covered under the economic participation and opportunity. Second is educational attainment, the status of opportunity for attaining education for all people. And third is health and survival, which means that what are the facilities that are there to ensure better health and to ensure survival of all the genders. And fourth is political empowerment, which means that on the political representation front, what is the status of all the genders and what interests are being advocated. So on these 4 parameters, the Global Gender Gap Index releases its ranking. So over the index, the highest possible score is 1, which if a country has attained can be called as the equality is attained, and the lowest possible is 0, which tilts towards inequality, and the score stands between 0 and 1. So the aim of this index obviously is to make or spread awareness on the issues of the gender disparity and serve as a compass to track progress on relative gaps between women and men on health, education, economy and politics. And through this annual yardstick, the stakeholders within each country are able to set priorities relevant in each specific economic, political and cultural context. What this means is that when the index takes out its ranking and the country comes to know where it stands with respect to gender disparity, then it can change or alter or make fresh laws and make provisions to sort of bridge this disparity. This is what serves as the objective of the index, where it serves as a yardstick and a lesson for the countries as to what changes they should make. So coming to India now, what is India's position? India is now one of the worst performers in South Asia, because it is now ranked 135 among the 146 countries. In this year's index, 146 countries were measured and India stands at 135. This is quite a low performance, right? And on the 4 parameters front, on the economic participation and opportunity front, it stands at the rank of 143 out of 146. This shows quite a poor performance on the economic participation front. This also comes in the backdrop of the female labor participation rate going down, which is why less and less number of women are seeking jobs in the economy. So that is why the economic participation on that front, India is not able to do that well. On the educational attainment level, the rank is 107, right? So it is comparatively better. And on the health and survival front, India stands last in all the countries on the rank 146, which means that the health and survival facilities in the country with respect to either saving female feticide and taking care of the women health at the early stages and the adolescent stages are of critical intervention areas which the government should make, because India stands last at the health and survival parameter, and last is political empowerment, in which India does comparatively the best, in which it has the 48th rank among all the countries. So these are the component rankings of the 4 parameters that are there, and other countries in South Asia, countries such as Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan and Sri Lanka stand ahead of India in the ranking, and only Pakistan and Afghanistan stand behind India in the Global Gender Gap Index. And in the last year's ranking, in the 2021, India stood at 140th position, and in the 2020 rankings, India stood at 112th position. So the rankings are comparatively improving, but they are still stagnant at a position in which India needs to rise from. So this was the important discussion with relation to the Global Gender Gap Index, and we come to the end of today's discussion, and we'll meet again tomorrow with the important articles from tomorrow's newspaper. Thank you.